in the neck to do that sometimes, and often it's not needed. So what I ended up with 82 and 8 is 90 and 1 is 91,000 and change of Citibank assets with a condition that we did want to verify that large deposit. I don't know if you guys have looked at the DU results on this file or the asset section, and it says, hey, for large deposits, go out to the Fannie Mae selling guide. So I don't know if anybody went on the web and went to the Fannie Mae selling guide or Citibank's guidelines, which essentially are the same for agency loans. Citibank guidelines are really Fannie Mae guidelines with a couple of overlays for both Freddie Mac and Citibank overlays, which aren't many. Essentially, Citibank just copies Fannie Mae guidelines into their manual, which they're allowed to do. And if there's a Freddie overlay, because Citibank sells their loans to Fannie and Freddie, right? So they don't want to say, we'll just use Fannie Mae only and then sell a loan to Freddie Mac. And then Freddie Mac says, well, wait, you didn't meet our guidelines because we have this obscure overlay that Fannie Mae doesn't have. And so it combines it all in one big happy manual. But the point I was making is if you would have gone out to the internet and said, Fannie Mae selling guide, large deposits refinance, essentially said exactly the same as the Citibank manual that we read yesterday, which is it's not required, but the underwriter is responsible for liability. So it puts us in that little bit of an uncomfortable spot where we said, well, this borrower, the ratios are approaching a high amount, a 2-unit cash out refinance with a little bit of credit derogatory credit. We decided, well, we better make sure they didn't open the unsecured personal loan because we know they did open the unsecured personal loan a couple years ago to create that $32,000 large, $34,000 large deposit. So we'll just go ahead and ask them for the source of it. And that's what I did. And so there's no other life insurance or any liquid accounts that the machine's counting now, just counting the $90,000 Citibank, which is what we wanted to do. So if a loan officer takes an application and they say, okay, let's go over all of your accounts, and they have 10 different 401k accounts and a life insurance cash value account, but they gave you bits and pieces of asset statements or it's not needed or they're expired statements, the normal course of action is to zero them out and put a note in your rationale that they're not needed to qualify, and I don't have complete statements. You do have to view them all to see if they have a large deposit that might want you to look closer. Now, one other thing about assets is you always want to look at recurring debt on asset statements. And what we know about these borrowers is they have a ton of activity on their Citibank accounts. So if anybody saw anything that I didn't, because it gets kind of tedious to look at 2 bank statements back to back for cities that you're trying to pick out activity. You almost have to have a memory that's much better than I do to say, I saw 8,000 one month, but I see 8,000 next. So anybody can raise their hand right now if they saw any activity that's going to make us want to ask, because we're responsible for that. And what by that I mean, not so much the amount added, because borrowers aren't required to verify all their sources of income if they don't need it to qualify. So if they had an annuity or a retirement pension that they didn't even tell us about, that they didn't need to qualify, normally you don't even have to mention it. You can in your rationale, but you don't have to say, you have a pension deposit. What's that all about? If you're not using it and it's not disclosed as income, we're not going to ask about that. Liabilities or amounts subtracted is the exact opposite. we are responsible to understand what borrowers are paying each month. So if they had this $800 lease, they just didn't say transfer to checking. They said lease $800, Venmo lease payment or something. Who knows what this stuff says anymore. Then you might have to look on the prior month and see if it says $800 Venmo lease payment. And you say, aha, I better ask this borrower, are you responsible for a lease payment? Explain this recurring deduction or subtraction from your checking account. Otherwise, you don't have to itemize each one of these under a microscope, because most of these are just like credit card payments and stuff. But you are responsible, so it's kind of a catch-22. Do you look at it all day for 4 days? No. Do you look at it to see, are they making mortgage payments to Bank of America that aren't on their credit report? Yes. Now, hopefully this is their second mortgage that we're paying off. So, just to be clear, we are responsible. There's that Neiman Marcus inquiry / buying something / hopefully we don't have to add a big debt. But we had to ask them about Neiman Marcus, because I think the other one for Banana Republic showed up on their credit report, but there was an inquiry for Neiman Marcus. So it's possible they bought something and took advantage of a discount, a store discount for opening a card, and they tell us, we opened a card with zero balance to get a discount on a purchase. Normally, on this kind of loan, we're going to say, well, can you give us your statement? Make sure it's a zero balance, because it was so recent. The rest of the stuff, browse through and make sure you don't see anything that's going to alert you to debt that we haven't accounted for. Luckily, in today's day and age, most of the debt show up on your credit report. So, I didn't see anybody raise their hand and say, I got one. So I'm going to assume we all are on the same page where there's a Capital One payment. Hopefully all these are captured on the credit report. And like I said, you only ask about the recurring ones, and they're usually leases and whatnot that borrowers are paying for third parties, or sometimes a mortgage that's a private mortgage or something, or sometimes it's a timeshare. It says the Orlando timeshare, and it says $500. You say, aha, if you have a timeshare, we're going to count that against you. Other than that, you just kind of look at them. Quicken Loans, that's their mortgage. So they do write a lot of checks every month, right? A lot of debit, a lot of activity. If you just look each day, say, that's a lot of activity.
Yeah.
Because every day they got something going on, and most of it's subtractions. But it's not recurring items that we're that worried about. So we're gonna Mercedes-Benz, there's that lease. So we're just gonna make sure that lease is counted in the debt. And that was an important one. So, that being said, I do want you guys to look closely at asset statements when you get them. Because if there is some sort of a debt on there that you didn't account for, you will get dinged, as they say. They say, hey, why didn't you count this debt? Or why didn't you ask about it? You say, well, it's not on their credit report. And they say, well, it says lease or something like that. So, let's go to, somebody said, Apple Card not captured on credit. I don't have an Apple Card myself, but I'm going to say we're not going to use it as a monthly recurring debt. Hopefully it's a debit payment. What day of the month were they subtracting Apple Cards? I'm old school. I'm not going to tell you guys my age, but when I was a youngster, Apple Cards didn't exist, so I don't know if they just use it as a debit card or what. But what day was it? 5/7. Okay, let's look at Apple Card on 5/7. Apple Card. Apple.
I don't see it on 5/7.
I'm sure they're buying stuff with Apple. But rather than dwell on Apple Card, because I doubt
credit card.
Include it. Yeah.
Not credit card. Let me open my
If it's a credit card versus a debit card, you might have to investigate it, but I don't think you're going to have to say, why do you have an Apple debit if it's a debit card? I'm not sure what day. Let's see. 5/7. And if somebody said it might be on their credit report anyway, under a different bank name.
Yeah, I think it wouldn't be on the.
Right, well,
yeah, it wouldn't be on this on the checking. So.
What? Where did we see it? Apple Card not captured and foundation lock on 5/7. Foundation lock on 5/7. I don't know. Whoever wrote that, you want to come off mute and say what you're looking at exactly, so that we can zero in on it. It is a credit card. Let me open my notes. All right. Well, we'll circle back to that because we'll investigate, and whoever's looking at that, just let us know what's going on, and we'll look at it. So then, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure in our system that we don't have any other debt, and we have all our debts counted. And then what we're going to do is we're going to look in our doc repository at our appraisal report and see if the appraisal has a CRM review. And if it doesn't, we're not going to accept the appraisal yet until such time as the CRM review, which is Citibank Collateral Review Department, they upload a form, and it's going to be called CRM Review, and they did not upload a form yet. The Freddie and Fannie submission reports are in there, the appraisal invoices in there, and the appraisals in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to see if there's any items on the appraisal that we're going to have to address. We're not going to be able to meet the appraisal conditions until such time as the CRM review is done, and they also put an AR6 note in there. So we're not going to put a key date accepted appraisal. I'm not even going to write my appraisal rationale yet until such time as the CRM says the value of 1115000 is acceptable, because they're the ones that determine it, not the underwriters. Now, we do determine if the property is appraised as is, and if they have legal zoning, and if they have any special assessments, and if they have any issues. I looked at this for a little bit last evening. You can raise your hand if you saw anything that was out of the ordinary. It's a 2-unit with a finished basement, and it's marked legal. Oftentimes, they may rent their third unit, the basement as a third unit. Unless they put it's illegal, we don't normally get too worried about it. We do not allow 2-unit properties with an illegal third basement unit, but it doesn't look like that's the case. Even if it has outside access only, which hopefully it doesn't. It doesn't say outside access, so it looks like the owner is using it. So then they are renting one of the units. Now, what you guys should have done immediately is gone out to the rental income section of the underwriter manual. So immediately, the first thing I would have done if I were looking at this is I would have gone to my web Citibank mortgage manual, and I would have looked at rental income. What's required? So they didn't give us tax returns. And in the old days, if you didn't give us tax returns, there's no way on the underwriting guidelines that you would ever use rental income. But things change. Rental income changes the way we document it, or if they even need it to qualify. What I believe is happening here is we're not using it to qualify. If you're not using it to qualify, you got to zero it out. And the appraisal is going to state because Fannie Mae does want to know the stated rents. But what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, our resources, agency, rental income drives your guidelines to determine whether A, you're documented properly, and then if you need it to qualify, let's see, subject property, calculating rental income. So let's just get right to this. If the borrower is qualifying using the full housing payment, documentation is not required. And I believe that's the normal course of action on a property like this. We're not going to use it to qualify, because if you are going to generate income, one of the following must be present. And it says you got to have a comp rent schedule. Well, obviously we have that. We better have it on a 2 to 4 property appraisal. Form 1025, I believe. But then it goes further to say, all right, if you're going to use rent, here's what you're going to have to do. You have a history of rent? Yes. Refinance? Yes. So we're in this top box. So you're going to average the income by getting 2 years tax returns or a current lease agreement if the borrower can document a qualifying exception. So forget about bullet point 2. It's going to be rare that you say, oh, there's an exception. Because when you see the word exception, usually it's going to say, wrong answer, right? Because we're not much interested in doing a whole lot of exceptions. And that's if the borrower says, well, my tenant's left because I renovated the house, and here's my receipt that I don't have a partial or no rental history for 2020 on my tax returns because the whole year I was renovating the house. Here's all my receipts, on and on and on and on. And you're going to have a big giant pile of documents to look at. The easy way is to say, I need 2 years tax returns with Schedule E. And I think I told you guys before, there may be a partial documentation. It looks like they even removed that because I thought it used to say pages 1 and 2 in Schedule E. Now it just basically says 2 year scheduled tax returns. So if you ever want to remember anything about rental income on a refi like this, if you don't have tax returns, you're probably not going to be using rental income for the subject property, right, on this particular loan. And that's the way I've been underwriting for years. If I don't have tax returns on this file, there's no way I'm using rental income. It's not going to happen. And it looks like the guidelines support my theory. It's not going to happen. So, as long as you don't need rental income, you're fine. You don't need tax returns. So it says here, don't worry about it. If you're not using rental income, don't worry about getting tax returns, is basically what this is saying. All right? You guys got any questions on rental income?
We'll actually be doing a session. Larry, rental income, we've got some things going on Monday where they'll be watching a self-paced course and things like that. So they'll get a little more into it then.
Okay, great.
Hey, Larry, I have a comment on the assets, just simplification. So what I was doing the statement for the account ending in 2733, I had mentioned I saw an Apple card. It was an Apple credit card, and it showed up on those statements in those 2 months provided. So I added it to the liability.
What dates and what account?
It was a 2733 account for both.
Okay.
For both months that was provided.
On what dates?
There was 153,525 and then 401. It says, yeah, that's it. The 401. It says the Apple card.
Apple card, $100.
Yes.
GS Bank.
Yes.
So they're paying the Apple card through GS Bank.
Yeah, it's an Apple credit card.
Right. Okay, well that's a good catch. Is it $100 on both?
And that's the thing. It was different. It was $100 here, $50 there, $40 there, $90 there.
Oh, okay, so they have more than one per month. And on the credit report, is there a bank called GS Bank anywhere?
No, I didn't see that. I didn't catch any GSB bank on the credit card.
Okay. And what was the total debits per month to Apple Bank or Apple Card?
In the April, I saw 100, and then the 5. In May, I saw a total of $90 for both. So 50 payment, and then there was a 40 payment.
How much in May?
In May, a total of $90.
$90. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll have to think about that. It still could be a debit card. It says credit card, card, but I'm not sure Apple cards. I'm not sure. Did you do any a web search or a Citibank policy search?
Yeah.
With Apple cards?
I did Google search, and I saw it was Apple credit card. Yeah, it's a credit card. Yeah, credit.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Well, we still may just note it in our rationale. Not sure what Apple does with folks if they front them. When you do a credit card, that means borrowers are running a balance each month. It's not a debit where you're just making a purchase on Apple Store. Rather, you're carrying a balance, and if this say GS Bank, which I don't know what GS is, it's Golden State or what, or if Apple has their own bank, and you run in a balance like a American Express card where you're running up your balance every month, then it doesn't show on your credit report. You would think Apple, getting good with the bank regulators, they would start reporting it on the credit report, because there's nothing regulators and OCC and all those guys, FDIC, there's nothing they dislike more than banks that don't report debt like that if you're running a bank, if Apple's running a bank. As a credit card issuer, if you will. But we'll think about that and think if we want to ask them about it or not. It hasn't come up. I'm not that familiar with what Apple offers folks. I just thought they do purchases then back to the appraisal. So when we were looking at, but that's a good catch. You know, it's something you can ask them for sure. We'll decide on if we want to. Do you have Apple running balance? Apple Bank. So on the appraisal, what we're going to end up with is we're not going to use rents because there's no tax returns, even though they said the second unit is rented, and we're going to make sure the system doesn't carry any rents. So when we run our decision engine and our DU and our underwriter worksheet or our 1008 and all those numbers, nothing should have rent in it, because if it does, you have to pull it out or you have to verify using tax returns. So you can't just say we're not using it, but the system already has it input. So you have to make sure the system doesn't have it either. And so what they said was, it's month to month for 2,000, and the owner's on unit 2. And then even though they gave you the expenses here, we wouldn't use this. And then what we're responsible for is making sure they have photos of the living areas and the bath. So it had 2 baths in each unit and the kitchen. You don't have to have a photo of the bedrooms anymore, but you have to have the bath. So there's 1 bath in unit 2. There's a half bath in unit 2. And then there's the basement. So there's unit 1, which they say is tenant occupied. Kitchen, living, full bath. Now we should have another bath, half bath. So we got the photos we need. You're supposed to have a rear photo. Hopefully we had that. And then it was appraised as is for 1.15, 115. And then location map, so make sure they don't have anything out of the ordinary. So all of that is done, and then the rear photo, I believe they have, sometimes they can't get to the rear of the property, but 99% of the time they can. They took front and the rear. So what we do is we say, all right, the appraiser said that property taxes are a little less than the tax cert. And the tax cert is what we're going to use. The title work, I didn't see any title work in the file yet when I looked. So the title work usually has title. So this says $7,043 a year. And then on the tax cert and the insurance cert, you want to make sure you have those numbers. So that what we're going to do is we're going to say in our rationale, here's the PITIA. Because remember, if you don't have the right PITIA for subject property, everybody will come after us. And they'll say, why are you doing approvals and you don't state? Even though the system has the PITIA, they want us to go ahead and state it. So this said it's 68, 68, 48, 48. So they totaled that to 66, 34. You pay it 4 times a year. And the 66 6634 is what we should use. And you do that in fees and escrows. And that divided by 12 is the monthly tax payment that we should qualify them with. And then we're going to go on record as saying, we're using this tax amount. And once you do that, you are allowed to change it later. But what you've done is you said, okay, I verified my monthly tax amount and my monthly insurance amount. And then my monthly anything else amount. And the only place I know how to do it here is escrow information, I believe, is where you can change it. So they have 1648 times 4 is 6592. 6634.76 divided by 4 is 1658. So I think I'm going to edit this to put 1658 if I can figure out where to edit this stuff. Now, this gets changed too. And the closers can change it back to whatever they have to. Because they're the ones that are closing the loan. But when we're in control of the file and we're qualifying them, then 6364, oops, I did that wrong. All right. And then I did the same thing with insurance, the annual payment. So now, if I save this, then it may ask me to say that these are valid fees. Then